In this video, you will discover how to use the scientific method to grow an audience as an entrepreneur with a podcast. So look, my name is Anthony Winery. I'm the co-founder of GetMoreListens.com, a company helping entrepreneurs with podcasts turn a slow growth show into a rapidly growing positive ROI show. Over the last 4 years, I've interviewed and coached 350 plus podcasters, and I'm also the co-host of Why Your Podcast Isn't Growing, which generates over $10,000 of attributed sales each and every month. Those down there are our books. If you're familiar with Daniel Larson, or our best-selling books, Podcast Made Simple, Podcast Marketing, that's where I'm from. And yes, Daniel Larson is a penny. Anyways, without further ado, this isn't about me, it's about you. So let's get straight into this. Imagine if Thomas Edison had given up after his first failed attempt to create a light bulb. Imagine if astronauts never made it to the moon because the first rocket test went wrong. These successes weren't achieved by chance. These were results of rigorous experimentation, refinement, and hallmarks of the scientific method. And today, we're going to harness that power to grow your podcast. So what exactly is the scientific method, I hear you asking? The scientific method is a systematic, logical way to investigate natural phenomena. That sounds like a big word, phenomena, right? Learn new things or correct and build on what we already know. It helps researchers make guesses, test them, collect data, and draw conclusions based on evidence. And again, I'm going to break down how exactly you can use this to grow your podcast. So the key steps typically include, when it comes to the scientific method, number one, observation, noticing and describing something that happens or exists. For example, you might see some plants in your garden that grow taller than others. Then we have question. So asking a question or identifying a problem based on what you notice. An example could just be, why are some plants growing taller than others? Then create a hypothesis. So based on what you've observed and based on your question, you create a hypothesis. So you make an educated guess that you can test to explain what you've noticed. An example could be, I think the plants are growing taller because they're getting way more sunlight within this area in my garden. You then experiment. There's no point just making a hypothesis and saying, yep, that's it, I've got it all right. It doesn't really work like that. You have to then experiment. So then you have to test. So when it comes to experimentation, you test your hypothesis by gathering data. An example could be, you move some shorter plants into a sunnier spot and track their growth, or you plant some seeds in the sunnier spot and track their growth. Next, you analyze. So looking at the data, you collect what you see, if your guess, your hypothesis was right or wrong. An example, you compare the growth of plants in a sunnier spot versus those that stayed in a shady spot. The conclusion, you draw a conclusion based on your data, decide if your guess was right or wrong, and if you need to start a test or if you need to test something else. An example, if the plants on the sunny side grew taller, your hypothesis is supported. Happy days. If not, it's refuted, which basically means a fancy way of saying it is just this, the hypothesis isn't correct, basically. And then, of course, we have repetition, iteration. So you can repeating the experiment to make sure the results are accurate. Again, you don't just do something once to go, done, dusted, that is a winner. No. We have to test over and over again, and it needs to be reliable and predictable. So you can test the hypothesis again, and this will let you know how strong the hypothesis is. When you have once, it could be luck. Twice, maybe, still could be luck. 3 times, there's a pattern there, right? Or you can test any hypothesis, and that could be, hey, I'm going to try different soil and see if the soil is the reason for the faster growth. So to summarize, the scientific method is a simple step-by-step way to investigate a question. We have an observation, we notice something interesting. We ask a question, why it's happening. We make a hypothesis, an educated guess. We experiment, we test out your guess. We analyze, we look at the results. We make a conclusion and decide if your guess, hypothesis, was right or wrong. Repetition/iteration, we test again to confirm the hypothesis, your guess, or we refine your guess and try something new. Again, this method is such an amazing way to find reliable answers to your questions by testing and learning from your results. So, other examples. Number one, it could be a fitness routine. Again, I'm going to go through 2 examples, and then I'm going to give you an example of a podcast, and I'm going to give you actual case studies of us using the scientific method to really to really test specific growth strategies when it comes to growing podcasts, and to feel confident that what we're doing, the actions we're taking, is actually driving more growth for our podcast. And that's when most podcasters completely screw up. So here's an example of the scientific method when it comes to fitness routine. Now here you can see that I've actually missed out observation. And that's simply put, for us, really, you can just start with the questions and it works out fine. You can start with observation as well, but starting with question works fine as well. So here we have a question. How can I improve my endurance? Hypothesis. Adding 15 minutes of high intensity interval training HIIT will improve my endurance. Cool. The experiment. I will do a 15-minute HIIT exercise daily workout for 4 weeks. Analysis. I will check my endurance, you can say your endurance, before and after the 4 weeks by timing your runs or doing other tests. Conclusion. See if your endurance improves. Do you run faster? Do you have more stamina? And do you feel out of breath? All of these different things. Essentially just test to see on a trackable basis, did I improve measurably? Finally, if it worked, keep doing HIIT or increase how much HIIT you do because it's clearly working, so do more of it. If not, test a different exercise. And here's a scientific method when it comes to business marketing strategy. You might ask a question. How can I increase my online sales? Hypothesis. Running Facebook ads will boost our sales by 20%. Again, I promise, guys, I'm talking about Facebook ads here. I promise you'll see in just a moment how this relates heavily to growing your podcast much faster, to increasing your engagement, and to making a shit ton more money and more impact. So bear with me. The experimentation with your hypothesis. Run a Facebook ad campaign for a month. Analysis. Track the sales and ad performance during that month. Conclusion. Did your sales go up by 20%? If yes, continue. If no, try a new strategy. Repetition/iteration. If it was successful, scale it up. If not, ask yourself why and maybe try different tests. Maybe it was your hook. Maybe it was a VSL. Maybe it was your landing page that looks so fancy. Maybe it was your targeting. The point is, you're just going to have to keep iterating and testing and testing and testing. And what you're doing is through a process of elimination, you figure out what's not working and what is working. So here's the actual power of the scientific method. The scientific method is so powerful because it provides you these advantages. Number one, speed, fast, lightning fast. I don't know, I'm getting so gassed off. I know I'm being weird here. Look, the point is speed, right? Yeah, I'm feeling pumped up. So if you feel me, my energy on, I'm going a bit crazy. Just know I'm in a good mood. It's been a good day. It's been a good day at work. We're winning. Podcast is growing. Clients are getting amazing results. So bear with me. Anyways, number one, speed. It helps you quickly identify what's working and what doesn't. Number two, lack of guesswork. It removes guesswork, right? Because you're making decisions back and based on data, not just, oh, I feel like this is working. Oh, I see that thing there. Oh, I'm doing this social media. So, oh, getting hard profile guest one's going to be really good for my podcast. Oh, podcast website is going to be really good. Can we get no, none of that crap, right? And most people do just guess, right? Number three, efficiency. You can focus your efforts on the strategies that you know are proven to work. No one wants to just waste their time and effort on something that isn't working, but most people end up doing that because they don't test these things out. Getting to the truth, you discover what really impacts your podcast growth. And finally, create a repeatable and reliable process once you find a successful strategy. You can repeat it and get consistent result, meaning what? You have a bit more, way more, not a bit more, way more control over your podcast growth. And I think that's what most people want, just actually understand what something's not working, what to focus on, and see themselves get actual, real, tangible results. So why am I telling you this? As podcasters, some of our biggest challenges that we face is finding the right strategies, putting in the necessary work, and improving and avoiding wasting time on unproductive efforts. Look, at this point, you might have been podcasting for months, if not years, 1 year, 2 years, 3, maybe even 4 years. And you can maybe you let me know, right? Is there anything more frustrating than wasting time on something that isn't working or doing the same thing over and over and over again and feeling like one day is going to take off, for your podcast never to take off, for your engagement never to increase, for you to never have people reaching out to you as much as you'd like, for you to never generate money from your podcast, for you to never generate leads from your podcast? All because, again, you don't have this process dialed in. That's more frustrating, and I think because we're constantly so busy that it doesn't give you time to really think and strategize and implement the scientific method. But we do. That's what we do with our clients in the Get More Listeners Academy. So look, because most podcasters ignore the scientific method and because they haven't got a proven process to follow, podcasters struggle with these problems here. Slow and steady, mundane podcast growth, even though you've been consistent for months, if not years. Struggling to turn your podcast into a positive ROI show that pays for itself and profits even a little bit each month. struggle with growth and monetization, which feels super hard, even though you produce amazing content and are constantly promoting on social media, and struggle with the podcast being an expensive time suck that you enjoy, but doesn't seem to gain significant traction no matter what you try. And it's all because you don't have a clear process to follow, a way to test what's worth exploring, and ultimately what you should ignore. And that's where the scientific method comes in. By applying this structured approach, you can systematically, I like that word, right? Systematically test out different strategies, measure the effectiveness of this, and refine your approach based on real data. This not only saves you a bunch of time, but ensures you're investing your efforts in the right place to make more impact. Look, I'll be the first one to admit it. When I first started working with clients one-on-one when it comes to podcasters, I was guessing, I was just hoping. I would basically monkey see, monkey do. I would see someone trying a different strategy, maybe getting a high profile guest on, or maybe promoting on social media, or maybe promotional clips. I was like a squirrel chasing a nut, but I didn't have a way to actually validate whether what I was doing was working. There was no clear cause and effect, and it was just kind of guesswork. So I started there, but I know that for my clients and for myself, things really start to take the right turn. Not just in my podcast, but in my business and my life. When I started applying the scientific method, where I actually started to test whether something was working or whether it was not. When I finally removed the guesswork from strategy. So using the scientific method might look something like this when it comes to podcast growth specifically. And in this case, we're going to look at optimizing your show when it comes to podcast guesting. So the question might be, how can I grow my podcast audience? Your hypothesis might be, inviting guests with large social media followings will increase my audience. The experiment might be inviting and interviewing guests with a big social media following over 3 months. The analysis would be, you check your podcast metric, downloads, engagement, new subscribers before and after, and ask yourself, was it significant? Did I have a massive growth? You look at the conclusion. Did my audience grow? If it was yes, invite more high-profile guests on. If no, maybe try a different experiment. Maybe ask yourself, well, why didn't they work? Is it because of the niche that I'm in? Is it because, I've got this guest on and, they're talking about operations around business when actually my audience really loves sales? Is it that the guest I got on, while they had a massive audience, my show itself wasn't really engaging and my retention rate was really low? So it's not just about it's not always black and white. You really have to really think and ask yourself really important questions like, why isn't this working? And then you create another hypothesis. So your hypothesis might be, okay, getting a high profile guest on doesn't work because they're coming to support the guest. So they're not going to stay a listener to my other episodes because I'm not the guest. They're coming to support the guest. And that could be a hypothesis of why getting high profile guests on doesn't work when it comes to retaining new listeners. And then, of course, like I mentioned, the final piece really is iteration. So if it's working, great. If it's not, try something different. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to walk you through actual real life clients that will help grow their shows, right? And one of our main strategies, we have a 4-step growth and retention system. The third step is all about podcast SEO. That's just a process essentially of ranking your podcast higher on Apple and Spotify. Yes, you can actually rank your podcast higher on Apple and Spotify by taking specific steps. And we've rigorously tested this, so we know it works. But anyways, so this is going to be an example of a real life client, of a real life podcaster. So no, not just bullshit, but you can see it actually working legitimately, right? Using the scientific method to optimize your podcast SEO might involve something like this. Number one, you observe, noticing that higher ranked shows attract more listeners. Question, asking how to improve your podcast to rank higher. Hypothesis, guessing that optimizing your title, description, and keywords will help you grow. For us, there's really 4 parts to it. Discoverability, rank for the right keywords, adding that to your title, description, show notes, show name. Second part, visibility, optimizing your cover art, so you're actually being seen and clicked on over the competition. Great, you're now ranking on page 1, or you're now ranking or now being discovered, but visibility is actually being seen and clicked on over the competition. That's your actual cover art, your show notes. It needs to sell the listen. The third piece is user engagement, making sure consistently in all your episodes, you have high retention time, meaning you have a high completion rate. That shows Apple and Spotify you have an engaged listener base, and they are far more likely to rank your show high because of that. And then the fourth piece is building relevancy. This is more of a long-term strategic approach, where you're just consistently hammering those keywords you want to start ranking for. So that's a little snippet of how we do it. But again, just for the sake, experiment. Number 5, analyze. So once you've made these changes, we're now monitoring our ranking. And when we increase in our ranking, does our listenership also increase over time? Conclusion, deciding if optimization worked or if it didn't work. And then of course, repetition and iteration, refining and repeating the process for continuous improvement, right? So this is an example. We have a client called Ben. He was really struggling to grow for 2-3 years, yada, yada, yada. You get the whole backstory. The point is, you went from 0 to 5,000 monthly downloads in 90 days after we relaunched the show. And we're really focused on podcast SEO. Our whole goal was to help him rank on page 1 of Apple and Spotify for the specific keyword electrician. That's what he pivoted into, and that's what we helped him rank for. There's other things that we did as well, but for now, this is just showing you how this can, again, really work, right? So you see when you type in on Apple or Spotify, he comes up on page 1. On Apple, he's literally second result. And then, on Spotify, he's second result. And then on Apple, he's actually the, fourth, right? And then, of course, you can see he literally went from zero to 5,000 monthly downloads because, again, we optimized the show for podcast SEO. And again, there's a bunch of different things that went into this. But we really want to show you the power of, again, podcast SEO. And more importantly, actually being able to test, because if we just guessed and hoped that would work, again, we're just guessing and hoping. That's complete bollocks. I don't know, people just kind of just hope things happen rather than actually having a process in place. If you're just going to guess all day and all night, it's insanity, right? So we have to have a process in place for this. And then, of course, we have our client success manager. So Atavia. So Atavia was a past client, then became our client success manager. And she launched a new show. She was able to grow it to, just under 1,000 downloads in around 30 days, 3 months after launching. Strictly with podcast SEO, no promotion, no guesting, is literally a solo show. She didn't even mention it to her family or friends. Totally organic reach and retention. Now, again, is 1,000, just under 1,000 downloads, like crazy growth, insane numbers? No. But what does it do? It helps us have total clarity that podcast SEO does absolutely work. Because in isolation, she was able to get to this point. Now imagine when we get her guessing. Imagine when we do all these other things in combination with podcast SEO. And she ran this test and see the results. You just see the graph, which looks absolutely nuts, right? And then, of course, when you type in gut health, because again, her podcast is all about IBS. That's a main keyword she ranked for, IBS, gut health, etc. When you search that in on Apple, guess what comes up in page 1? Her podcast was just called Gut Reactions. And this trajectory is only going to go up, 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 right? So for her, what do we do, right? And for them, what do? We keep on targeting those keywords that they're ranking for. We keep them ranked high, so they are being discovered by new listeners, and so they are keeping listeners coming back for more, right? And that's how you can test this. You can test it with a bunch of different strategies that you have. So let's recap. The scientific method is a systematic, again, I like that word, systematic, logical way to investigate natural phenomena. Phenomena, big word, I like it too. Learn new things, collect data, and then build on what we already know. It helps researchers, wherever researchers were marketers, or business owners who want to grow a podcast, allow us to test these guesses, hypothesis, collect data and draw conclusion based on actual real life evidence, not just random guesswork. So again, observation, notices something interesting, question, ask why is this happening, hypothesis, make an educated guess, experiment, test the guess, the hypothesis, analysis, look at the results and measurements, conclusion, define if the guess was right or wrong, repetition or iteration, test again to confirm that it absolutely works, or refine your guess. So why didn't it work, right? Now look, I can go into this, that, or all the little minute details, but the general gist and message I really want you to walk away with here is, you're already busy as it is as a podcaster. You already have so many things you're trying to do. Family, business, growth, the podcast itself, getting guests on, managing the show, managing team. There's so much going on right now. And you might have things figured out, but if you keep operating the way you are, just hoping that things will just magically happen without having a way to test to see if something is working or not, you're doing yourself a disservice. You don't have enough time as it is anyway. So why wouldn't you just get to the conclusion of what works and what doesn't? Understand the few actions that drive growth, because so many people are focused on the wrong things. Are focused on like promotional clips. Or how do you know promotional clips actually help you grow? Are focused on promoting on social media. Or how do you know your promotional on social media actually helps you, grow? Or getting high profile guests on. Have you actually tested and seen the results that getting high profile guests on versus solo shows or versus shows where it's like, long form, you and a co-host gets better results, or you get on a different podcast. Like, there's so many different things you could be doing, but honestly, from what I found, there's actually only like a few actions that drive massive growth when it comes to growing a podcast. And this really is my encouragement to you to start testing, to stop the guesswork. And if you didn't want to test, again, we've done a lot of these testings for you, or that's how we'll help clients get incredible results like the one you've seen so far. But again, this isn't a pitch. It's just more so really again encouraging you, letting you know, like just try things, experiment, see for yourself. And don't take my advice. Some young guy, I could be chatting a bunch of nonsense for all you know. Test it for yourself and see if it works and if it doesn't. So look, what does this mean for you as an actual entrepreneur with a podcast? Number one, the scientific methods are powerful because it provides you several advantages. Number one, speed. It helps you quickly identify what's working and what's not. Number two, it removes guesswork. You can make decisions backed by data, not just a gut feeling. Number three, it saves you time. Again, you're already strapped for time, so you can focus on your efforts on the right strategies that are proven to work. Number four, you get to the actual truth. You discover the reality of what's really impacting your podcast growth rather than feeling like you didn't have much control. And you can repeat those actions again. Number five, creating repeatable, predictable ways and processes to grow your podcast. Once you find a successful strategy, you can repeat it consistently to get results. Damn, this is a long bloody video. I didn't realize it was going to be 25 minutes. So there they have it. Like I mentioned, my name is Anthony Maneri. I hope you found it super valuable. I hope it's changed your perspective on how you grow your podcast. And again, if you want to save some time trying to figure all this stuff out yourself, or you want to work with an actual experienced team who've done all the testing, we're not stopping. We're currently testing things with our clients and our podcast and ourselves to see what works and what doesn't, and having actual data to show you that it's not just guesswork. It's not just random. Like, you can take certain actions in the podcast growth. So for you, try to figure that out yourself. And if you're interested to learn more about what we do, click the first link down below. And if not, subscribe. Again, if you click that link, it is going to be a pitch. I'm going to pitch absolutely bloody laugh at you. I don't care. Point is, I'm going to pitch you and see if you can have a bit of fun. And if it resonates, amazing. If it doesn't, no worries. You can binge our back catalog. Again, we're building number one education company out there for entrepreneurs of podcasts who want to grow fast, get big, make impact, and make a boatload of money. Turning the slow growth podcast into a rapidly growing positive ROI show. And baby, God damn, I'm feeling good. Right. Anyways, I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. Absolutely fantastic. God bless.